So I'm just going to talk about marking some patterns now for the circular patterns and the wave patterns that we'll do over the next few weeks. And the nice thing is once we've got a grid marked up onto your fabric, as you can see here that I marked up with the water erasable felt tip, you can mark circular pattern and wave patterns and quite a range of the different ones that are on canvas. So this here is a larger grid that I drew out, and this is a slightly smaller one. But what I've started with, and I'm going to just draw out two grids that are 14 by 14 centimetres. And I'm going to have a go at doing one that's with the larger circle, and then one that is with the slightly smaller one, if you want to try that as well. So this here is a 7 centimetre diameter circle that I just made out of a cereal box with a compass. Used a compass, but you could use something circular. And then this is the top of a lid of something that's 4 centimeters diameter there. So just to show you, you can make the grids out of whatever circle you would like to. But doing this 14 by 14, as you can see, 7 centimeters fits into the 14. So the radius of that, which is half of the diameter, is how we're going to draw up our grid. So actually, when I draw the grid up, our circle will sit over it into quarters of the grid. So if I divide this up into 7 to start with, so again, you could do this straight on your fabric, or if you're keeping sort of a graph paper or paper copy of all your patterns, mark it up onto paper first. So I've divided that into 4, and now I'll split that each of those into 4. So I'm looking at 3.5, which, like I said, is the radius of the circle. And then and 3.5 centimeter squares. So now what you can see is my circle fits into that. It's quartered it. So the first one we can have a go with is this one here, which is the 7 treasures, the overlapping circles. So the way that I'll create that is I will draw around my circle here, here, and here. Like so. And then to get the overlapping, what we do now is we stagger that circle. So now I can put it in the middle here, so it still fits within 4 of the squares. So that's the middle of the squares, but we actually drop it down by 1 as well. So you've actually got 4 circles and then 1 placed in the middle. So I did say there, but it's actually dropped down 1. You'll soon know that you've got the pattern right because it's got these sort of shapes in each edge of the circle. So that's our sort of full one there. Then the others, again, so this one's been made in the center there. And then if I just shuffle this to the left, I can mark just a semicircle there, and it still creates that same pattern. And then the same here on this side. And then the same again. So I will take this up to the top here, and then one over there. So you'll soon see sort of what pattern you are looking to create. You are welcome to just print out the pattern as well. So that's how we'd mark the 7 treasures there. And that's the first pattern that we're going to have a go with. And then if you did want to, you could do that of the smaller scale, like I said, with the 4 centimetre diameter circle, which I can talk through in a moment. So if you haven't got a circular template or a compass, what you can do is something a little bit more freehand. So this is just here, I've taken a section of the grid above. So it's a square divided into 3.5 squares. So once it's broken down, if you like, your circle into sort of 4 quarters there, it breaks down the pattern to make it a little bit easier if you wanted to draw by freehand. Not the easiest, but it can be done if you haven't got anything to make a circular shape. And what you're doing is you're just looking to sort of create a curve by hand that goes from one point to the other. So it just breaks down your circle into 4 sections. So you could potentially just have a go with it drawn a little bit more freehand if you wanted to, like that. And then you do that thing of you offset it and you then draw and drop it down your other curve from this side to that side, but bending the other way. You'll find that a lot of the other patterns that are created from the circles and curves are like this 7 treasures, but just with certain points removed, where you end up with a shape that sort of flexes in at the side and then curves out here. So that becomes the pattern here without these bits. So you actually create this shape here, which is one of the patterns of the fishing nets patterns. So the 7 treasures is quite good to see how the others are all sort of created. So once you've marked out your pattern like this, the first thing will be to do the stitches round the outside. Your border is the first step, and then we'll do the lines, wavy lines. So what can also help with having this grid drawn on is when we come to sort of this intersection, which we're not obviously going to sew the grid, although that is another pattern, what you can make sure is that your stitch round the border doesn't land on these points anyway. So what this sort of 3.5 centimetre small grid that it's created into, you'll probably get 5 stitches or 4 stitches into that. So then once we've sewn the border, we start sewing the waves. So on a really big repeat pattern, you'd get even more of a flow. But what we do is we sew in a wave type pattern. So we go like this. And then the idea is that you do all the waves sort of in one way as such. But to save thread, because we're only doing a 14 by 14 centimetre section, what we can do is you can just then sort of land at this point. You're obviously going to be leaving space around here because we're getting quite a few lines landing, but you can then just work back up the other way with the same flow of thread. And then if you still not run out, what you could do is sort of go down this section and then potentially finish this one here and then start again on another one down to here and then back up to here, and then the same with these ones in the corners. It's a little bit trickier, so you could sort of go like this, round to here, and then get the flow this way. Essentially come over here, back round to here, and like this. And then you'd have this one here. And actually with this first one, if I'd gone down here and before going back up had just gone like this, then you can sew it in about a flow of about 4 lines of thread before having to set up and rethread. And the idea is we're leaving and not landing the stitches on any of the crosses. So the grid is just sort of temporary to mark our pattern. So we are just sewing the waves to create this 7 treasures pattern. There is, also, as always, lots of different patterns that sometimes there is then the addition of these crosses sewn in as well. But I'd say to start with, for the true 7 treasures, we're just doing the waves, not the actual grid. So number 1, we'll start on the border and then just add the waves in.